Hi guys, welcome to my EMATHS2 Excel check, and here's my project. So for part 1, it's just my claim and my source. We'll skip that. And now let's go into part 2. In part 2, I have to find a null and alternative hypothesis. For my null hypothesis, it will be that 7 to 8 hours gives you quality sleep. And my alternative hypothesis will be the amount of time needed for quality sleep does not have to be 7 or 8 hours. Why do I use this alternative hypothesis? Because I see a lot of poly and GC students spending more time studying and less time sleeping due to the increased workload of school. And I want to find out if these poly or GC students still consider these shorter sleep hours of less than 7 to 8 hours as quality sleep, or if they need more than 7 to 8 hours of sleep to feel like they have a quality sleep. This is the Google form I did, and here's my results. Why is this suitable? Well, my sample size is above 30, meaning it's considered a big sample size according to Mizo AI. A bigger sample size is better because it reduces the impact of any random error and increases the accuracy and reliability of research findings. Let's move on to part 4. For the sample mean, we'll actually take the sum of all the hours over here divided by our sample size 40, which gives me 6.33. Moving on to standard deviation, the formula is basically our mean times the sum of the square differences divided by n minus 1, where n is our sample size and we square root the whole thing. Moving on to the t-test. For the t-test, we'll take the sample mean minus population mean divided by standard deviation divided by the square root of our sample size 40. And that will give us a t-value. For the p-value, we're actually using a formula given by the teacher in LMS, where L40 actually equals to our absolute value, which is the t-test, and then L35 minus 1 is just our sample size minus 1. For part 5, I'll be using a t-test. Even though my sample size is 40, which is bigger than 30, my sources, population, standard deviations are unknown. Hence, I cannot use the z-test and must use the t-test. So from this table over here, you can see my results and my workings. And there's actually two ways to test if we can reject our null hypothesis or we fail to reject our null hypothesis. However, since the question asks us to find if there's significant evidence or insufficient evidence to reject HO at significance level 0.5%, we must use the p-value test and the alpha test. So for this test, we'll compare alpha to the p-value to test our claim to reject HO. So for this test, if we want to reject HO, p-value has to be smaller than alpha. However, as you can see from our table over here, our p-value is 1.423, which is way bigger than 0.05. And hence, we fail to reject null hypothesis HO. Since our p-value is larger than alpha, we have insufficient evidence to reject the claim HO at 5% significance level. Hence, we are unable to reject the claim HO. Thus, I've concluded that 7 to 8 hours is needed for quality sleep based on the result. Finally, for part 6, we have to find and construct and interpret the 95% confidence interval. Well, what does this mean? Well, in simple terms, the confidence interval can be described as a correct range. So whatever falls in it is, in a sense, correct. For example, a confidence interval falls between 1 and 3. So if any number falls between that range, we can assume that it does not contradict the given claim and we cannot reject our null hypothesis because it is correct. If any number falls outside that range, we can assume that the claim is unlikely and we can reject our null hypothesis since it is wrong. So in this case, using our results and our studies above, let's use this. So let's say a poly student gets 6.5 hours of sleep on average. As 6.5 falls between our confidence interval range, which we have found above, which is 5.791 hours of sleep to 6.941 hours of sleep, we can assume that this student thinks that 7 to 8 hours of sleep is needed for quality sleep. And this statement is correct in a sense because it is our null hypothesis.